What if the solution to your worst gardening problem has been sitting in your kitchen cabinet this entire time, and you just never thought to use it this way? Welcome back to Roots and Garden Secrets. What I am about to share completely changed the way I manage my garden, and I think it will do the same for you. Take a look at this. This is my backyard from 3 weeks ago. Dandelions spreading across the beds, crabgrass pushing through every crack in the path, bindweed climbing the fence like it owned the place. And now look at what you are seeing right now. Same garden today. Clean soil, clear paths, not a single weed in sight. That entire transformation came from one single ingredient that costs less than $1 and is already sitting in every American home. And no, it is not vinegar, it is not salt, and it is not anything from the garden center. I already know what you are thinking. Another internet trick that sounds great but falls apart the moment you try it in a real garden. I thought the same thing for years. I spent 15 years trying everything from store-bought herbicides to every homemade recipe online. Most of them disappointed me. But before I reveal what this ingredient is, here is what you need to understand. The ingredient itself is only half the story. The real secret is in how you use it, when you use it, and most importantly, what you do afterward. That last part is exactly what most people skip, and it is precisely why their weed problems keep coming back every single season. Today I am going to show you how to win this fight, not for a week, not for a month, but for the entire growing season, without harming your soil and without spending more than a few dollars. If that sounds like something your garden needs, hit subscribe and give this a thumbs up. Now let us get into it. Let me be honest with you about something first. If you have been gardening for any amount of time in this country, you already know that weeds are not just an inconvenience. They are a war. And it is a war that starts the moment the ground thaws in March and does not let up until the first hard frost in November. That is nearly 9 months of non-stop battle, season after season, year after year. And here is the part that most people do not realize until it is too late. The problem is not just the weeds you can see. The real problem is what is hiding underneath your feet right now. A single square foot of ordinary garden soil can contain thousands of weed seeds lying dormant, waiting. Some of those seeds can survive in the soil for 10 years. Others can wait 15 or even 20 years for the right conditions to sprout. All they need is a little light, a little moisture, and suddenly you have an army of unwanted plants pushing through your beds overnight. And the 3 weeds that give American gardeners the most trouble are dandelions, crabgrass, and bindweed. Dandelions look harmless, but their taproot can reach 16 inches deep into the ground. Break that root when you pull, and a brand new plant grows right back from what is left. Crabgrass is an annual, which sounds manageable until you realize that a single plant can drop hundreds of seeds into your soil every fall, sitting there all winter just waiting for spring. And bindweed, especially if you garden in the western United States, is in a category of its own. Its roots can penetrate 30 feet into the ground, and it spreads both from seeds and underground runners simultaneously. Pulling it is practically pointless. So, like most gardeners, I went looking for solutions, and I tried everything. I started with hand pulling, spending hours on my knees with a bad back and blistered fingers, only to watch the same weeds return within a week as if nothing had happened. Then I moved on to Roundup. And yes, it works. But at what cost? Research published in Frontiers in Environmental Science found that glyphosate does not just kill weeds, it disrupts the entire community of beneficial microorganisms living in your soil. It targets what scientists call the shikimate pathway, a biological process present not only in plants, but also in the bacteria and fungi that your soil depends on to stay alive and productive. You eliminate the weed, but you quietly destroy the invisible foundation that makes your garden grow in the first place. So I put the Roundup away and turned to the homemade remedies I kept seeing online: vinegar, boiling water, salt. Some of these produced results that lasted a few days, maybe a week. Vinegar can scorch the leaves, that part is true. But the root survives completely untouched, and within 10 days you are looking at fresh green growth in the exact same spot. Salt is even worse. Pour salt on a garden bed and you are looking at dead soil for years. Nothing grows there, not weeds, not vegetables, not anything. Salt accumulates in the soil and takes seasons to break down. That is not a solution. That is giving up with extra steps. I reached a point where I was genuinely ready to accept that weeds were just part of the deal, that every gardener simply had to live with them. But then I stumbled onto something that changed my perspective entirely, and that is exactly what I want to share with you right now. So what is this ingredient that changed everything for me? I am going to tell you right now. No buildup, no dragging it out. It is baking soda, plain, ordinary sodium bicarbonate. The same white powder sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now, probably next to your flour and your spices, the one you paid less than $1 for at the grocery store. I know. Your first reaction might be skepticism, and I completely respect that. But stay with me for a moment, because the science behind this is genuinely fascinating. And once you understand how it actually works on a cellular level, the results you are going to see will make perfect sense. Baking soda attacks weeds through 3 separate mechanisms happening at the same time. The first is osmotic stress. The sodium in sodium bicarbonate draws water out of the weed's cells through a process called osmotic pressure. Think of it like a sponge being wrung out from the inside. The plant literally dehydrates from within, and there is no way for it to recover once that process begins. The second mechanism is pH shock. Baking soda in solution has a pH of around 8.3, which is significantly alkaline. When that contacts the leaf surface, it creates a chemical environment that plant cells simply cannot function in. Photosynthesis slows down. Nutrient absorption breaks down. The weed is essentially being starved and dehydrated simultaneously. Now, I want to be straightforward with you, because I believe in giving you the full picture. Baking soda works most powerfully on young seedlings and weeds growing in pavement cracks and path joints. For deep-rooted perennials like bindweed, repeated applications are necessary. This is not a one-spray miracle for every situation, but used correctly as part of a system, which I will explain shortly, it delivers results that will genuinely surprise you. Here is where the formula gets powerful. Using baking soda alone gives you partial results, but when you combine it with 2 other ingredients from your kitchen, you create a triple-action solution that is dramatically more effective. The first addition is white vinegar. Most people think of vinegar as a weed killer on its own, but that is not actually why it is in this formula. Vinegar works here as a penetrant. Every weed leaf has a thin, protective, waxy layer on its surface, called the cuticle. That layer exists specifically to repel water and foreign substances. A small amount of vinegar breaks through that waxy barrier and opens the door for the baking soda to reach the cells directly. The second addition is a small amount of dish soap. Dish soap is what chemists call a surfactant. It reduces the surface tension of water, which means instead of beating up into droplets that roll off the leaf, your solution spreads out like a film and coats every millimeter of surface area. Nothing escapes. So the way I think about it is this. Vinegar breaks the armor, dish soap ensures complete coverage, and baking soda does the work of destroying the plant from the inside out. 3 actions hitting at once. That is why this formula outperforms any single ingredient on its own. Here is the exact recipe. You will need 3 tablespoons of baking soda, 1 quart of hot water heated to around 140 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Not boiling, because boiling water can break down the bicarbonate before it reaches the weed. Then add 1 teaspoon of dish soap and 2 teaspoons of regular white vinegar. Mix in that order. Start with the hot water, stir in the baking soda until fully dissolved, add the dish soap, then add the vinegar last, and stir gently. Pour it into a spray bottle and you are ready. One important note, always mix this fresh before each use. Sodium bicarbonate in solution gradually loses its potency over time, so a fresh batch every application gives you the strongest results. The total cost of this per quart is under $1, and that quart is enough to treat 10 to 15 square feet, depending on how heavily you spray. Compare that to commercial herbicides running anywhere from $30 to $60 per liter, and you start to understand why this approach makes sense on every level. Now let us get into the practical side of this, because knowing the formula is only the beginning. How you apply it makes all the difference, and that is where most people go wrong even when they have the right ingredients in their hands. The first thing to understand is timing. The single best window to apply this solution is in the evening, after the sun has dropped and the temperature has cooled down, on a day when no rain is expected for at least 24 hours. Here is why that matters. During the middle of the day, the sun evaporates your solution too quickly off the leaf surface before it has time to penetrate and do its work. And in the early morning, Dew sitting on the leaves dilutes the solution the moment it lands. Evening gives you that perfect window where the solution can sit on the leaf surface all night long, working steadily through the dark hours, with nothing interfering. Now for the 3 most common American garden weeds, and exactly how to handle each one. For dandelions, set your spray bottle to a direct stream rather than a mist setting. Aim straight into the center of the rosette, that tight cluster point where all the leaves meet in the middle. You want the solution to flow down the stem toward the crown of the root, which is the most vulnerable point of the entire plant. Soak it thoroughly and let it work overnight. For crabgrass, you want full leaf coverage rather than a targeted stream. Coat every blade you can reach. Because crabgrass seeds continue germinating from the soil throughout the season, plan to repeat this application every 5 to 7 days on any new growth that appears. Consistency is what breaks the cycle. For bindweed, the approach is different again. Spray as many leaves as you possibly can reach, because bindweed has the ability to absorb substances through its leaves and transport them downward through its root system. The more leaf surface you coat, the more active solution travels down toward those deep roots. Expect to treat bindweed every week for 3 to 4 consecutive weeks. And whenever you are spraying near plants you want to protect, hold a piece of cardboard between the weed and your garden plants as a simple shield. It takes 10 seconds and saves you a lot of regret. Here is what you will actually see happening day by day. On day 1, the leaves still look green. You will notice a faint white residue on the surface from the baking soda settling, but nothing dramatic yet. Do not panic and do not reapply. On day 3, the edges of the leaves begin turning yellow and the blades start to curl inward. That curling is the plant losing water from the inside out, which is exactly what you want to see. By day 7, the weed is completely dried out and brown. Pull a dandelion at this point and the root comes out soft, brown, and fully dead all the way down. That is something vinegar alone could never deliver. Because vinegar only burns what is above ground while the root sits untouched and ready to regrow. Before I move on, there are a few places where you should never use this solution. Do not spray it directly onto active vegetable beds, because it does not distinguish between a weed and your lettuce. Avoid using it on your lawn grass, as it will leave brown patches. Keep it away from ponds, water features, or wells. And never apply it to wet leaves, because moisture on the surface dilutes the formula before it can work. Now here is something most weed videos never tell you, and it is one of my favorite things to share. Baking soda is not just a weed killer. It is one of the most versatile tools you can have in your entire garden. If your tomato plants are showing signs of early blight or powdery mildew, mix 1 tablespoon of baking soda with 1 gallon of water and 1 teaspoon of dish soap, then spray the foliage every 7 to 10 days in the early morning. Fungal diseases thrive in acidic conditions with a pH between 5 and 6. When baking soda raises the pH on the leaf surface, it creates an environment where fungal spores simply cannot take hold. You can also lightly sprinkle 1 to 2 tablespoons of baking soda around the base of your tomato plants and water it in gently. Gardeners have long reported that this helps neutralize excess soil acidity, resulting in noticeably sweeter fruit at harvest. For roses and cucumber plants dealing with powdery mildew, use the same foliar spray formula, but add 1 teaspoon of vegetable oil to help the solution cling to the leaves longer between applications. One caution though, do not overdo any of these applications. Baking soda is gentle at the right doses, but excess sodium in your soil over time can cause problems. Use it with intention, not abundance. Here is the part that most weed control videos stop before they get to, and in my opinion, it is the most important part of everything I have shared today. Killing the weeds that are already growing is step 1. But if you stop there, new seeds in your soil will sprout, and you will be back in the same situation within weeks. The real game changer is step 2, and that is preventing new weeds from ever reaching the surface in the first place. The answer is mulch, and it is simpler than most people think. Studies show that a proper layer of organic mulch can block up to 80% of new weed growth simply by cutting off the light that seeds need to germinate. For your flower beds, apply bark mulch at a depth of 3 to 4 inches across the entire bed after your first baking soda treatment. For vegetable beds, use straw or grass clippings at the same depth around your plants. For driveway cracks and sidewalk joints where bindweed and dandelions love to creep in, Fill those gaps with a mixture of sand and baking soda at a ratio of 10 parts sand to 1 part baking soda. That alkaline environment discourages seeds from taking root all season long. And if you want an extra layer of protection early in the season, apply corn gluten meal to the soil surface in late March, before weeds begin to germinate. Use about 1 pound per 10 square feet. It is a natural pre-emergent that stops seeds from establishing without harming plants that are already growing. Now I want to leave you with something that goes a little deeper. Because after 15 years in this garden, I have come to believe that the most important skill any gardener can develop is learning to read the soil itself. Healthy soil tells you everything you need to know if you know how to listen. Reach down and pick up a handful from your garden bed. If it is dark, crumbly, and falls apart loosely in your hand, that is a good sign. If it smells rich and earthy after rain, that smell has a name. It comes from a compound called geosmin, produced by beneficial bacteria called actinomycetes that are actively breaking down organic matter and feeding your plants. That smell means your soil ecosystem is alive and working. Now consider this. A single teaspoon of truly healthy soil contains more living organisms than there are people on this entire planet. And mycorrhizal fungi alone, the invisible fungal networks that partner with plant roots, are connected to over 80% of all land plants and can increase a plant's ability to absorb phosphorus by more than 100%. These are your real allies underground. And every time someone reaches for a chemical herbicide, that entire invisible community takes the damage alongside the weeds. Heavy weed pressure is not just a surface problem. It is often your soil telling you that something underneath is out of balance. When you work with that rather than against it, everything in your garden responds. So here is your complete seasonal plan laid out simply. In March and April, we your first baking soda treatment across all path cracks, bed edges, and fence lines. Then let it work for a full week before clearing the dead material. In May, lay down your mulch layer and apply corn gluten meal if you choose to. From June through July, walk your garden every 2 weeks and spot spray anything new that appears. In August, top off any areas where the mulch has thinned. That is the entire system. My estimate for total time spent managing weeds this way is 3 to 4 hours for the whole year, compared to what used to be 45 hours of hand pulling across 30 weekends at around an hour and a half each time. To bring it all together quickly, 3 tablespoons of baking soda, 1 quart of hot water at 140 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, 1 teaspoon of dish soap, 2 teaspoons of white vinegar. Under $1, under 1 minute to mix. Results you will see within 3 days, and a weed-free garden that holds through the season. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me which weed gives you the most trouble in your garden, whether it is dandelions taking over your beds, crabgrass spreading through your lawn, or bindweed climbing everything in sight. I read every comment and I will do my best to point you toward the right approach for your specific situation. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is a great time. Next week, I am putting together something I know many of you have been asking about. A homemade fertilizer recipe that can genuinely double your tomato yield using ingredients you probably already have at home. You do not want to miss that one. A garden is not a battle to be won. It is a living ecosystem to be understood and cared for. The moment you stop fighting it and start working with it, everything changes. I will see you in the next video.